My guest is joining me right now. Dumebie Olumide. She is the economics and research analyst at Stears Business. Hello, Dumebie. Thank you for joining us. You know what your name reminds me of now? Rema. Dumebie, Dumebie. That song.
I get that a lot. And I think I'm used to it now.
Oh, okay. So that's what it reminds me of. So welcome, Dumebie, to the show. Dumebie,
Thank you.
stay with me, live with me. That's what your name means. So fantastic name. All
Yes.
right. Yes. So
Thank
Dumebie,
you.
let's go straight ahead. We're looking at the airline industry, and before the break, I did say the airline industry and not aviation, and I really need to make that distinction because there's a distinction between the airline industry and the aviation industry. The airline industry or the airlines sector is like a subset, is a part of the aviation industry. So you're seeing that the airline industry refers to companies who employ pilots, flight passengers, and maintenance of those flights, while the aviation sector involves even the regulatory agencies, the companies that design and manufacture airlines and what have you, airport operations and all of that. But we're sticking with the airline sector this morning. The first question to you really is the Nigerian airline business good business? Let me start with that.
Okay, so first off, you're very right about the fact that the airlines industry is very distinct from the aviation sector, and that actually cuts across different sectors of any economy. So you have in the industries literally make up the sector. So that's what basically you were trying to really point out there. So for the airlines business, generally, I mean, it has been globally stated or said that the airlines business is not a profitable business. And when we talk about like profit, we're looking at this in terms of their net interest income. So you're looking at the profit after they deducted all their costs, after they deducted taxes, and you realize that airlines actually they are very accustomed to bankruptcy. They are very accustomed to huge losses. And this is because the airlines actually, it's a very capital intensive business. The amount of money that they spend on getting the aircraft alone, takes a huge chunk of their money. And they have a lot of costs that are very recurrent. And these costs don't go anywhere, whether or not they fly. So from maintenance costs to their operating costs, to the cost of catering, cost of training their flight attendants and even the pilots, all of these costs are constantly in the loop of their business activities, whether or not they fly. And while I was having a conversation with a very the licensed engineer with the NCAA, he did mention something very fantastic to me, or very interesting to me, that once you purchase an aircraft, it's like the beginning of your financial woes as a business or as an airline owner. It just begins to mount, basically.
I think it was Richard Branson. I'm trying to get it now. Let me say, I think it was Richard Branson that said that if you enter the airline business, if you were a billionaire, you'll become a millionaire because of the operating costs associated with running an airline. But in the case of Nigeria, which cost do you think, or which factors contribute to the industry not being as profitable as many people think?
So right now, because of the Russian-Ukraine war and our current FX issues, the most recurrent or the biggest cost right now for airlines is the aviation fuel. So the price of aviation fuel has literally skyrocketed between the beginning of the year and now. So I think aviation fuel right now is trading at, or is selling at about 700 naira per liter, or even more for some airlines. And remember that Nigeria imports this petroleum product. So, and this, it's not only aviation fuel Nigeria imports. Nigeria imports all refined petroleum products. Aviation fuel is just one of them. And with the forex issues that we have, this is reflected in the price of the commodity, and airlines bear the brunt of this. Unfortunately for airlines, because of the kind of business model that they run and the cost structure of their business, it's not easy for them to pass on these costs to the consumers in terms of ticket prices. So we've seen that the airline business, yes, the airline operators of Nigeria, which comprises of the 9 private airlines that we have currently, Ibom Air, Airpeace, and a number of Dana Air, a number of all of these airlines. We see that it comes, to set a price ceiling from 30,000 or 20,000 the last year or last 2 years to 50,000. And people did revolt this, but people still want to fly because of insecurity. They would rather, want to fly um, than travel by road. But regardless, the whole core of this is that the airlines are not able to, transfer the burden of this increase in price to the consumers immediately. So they are bearing a huge chunk of this cost. And the second thing that is really affecting them, I already mentioned the FX, which is reflected in the price of their aviation fuel. Another thing that FX is costing or increasing for them is their maintenance costs. So airlines, they have to undergo maintenance checks, and there are about 4 of them from A to D. And the C and D checks are the most important checks. And unfortunately, it's not unfortunate though, but airlines in Nigeria, most of them are their aircraft are leased. So, and apart from the aircraft being leased, they have to undergo these checks. They take their airlines back, they send their airlines abroad for maintenance checks, and then these airlines are now brought back into the country. So these FX costs are still reflected in their maintenance costs. And like I mentioned before, we find it very difficult to pass the burden of this increase in cost to the consumers. But I think as at the beginning of the year, when we saw the sharp rise, when we saw that the increase in aviation fuel was beginning to increase, the AON came out to say that actually the price of a ticket should actually be going for about 121,000 naira. Just I'm not for a return ticket right now. Just to get the ticket that you're going to buy to probably take yourself from Lagos to Abuja or something, and it's reflected in all of their maintenance costs, their FX issues, the cost of aviation, so all of these are reflected in their costs. I remember that they also still have to train their pilots, they have to train their air hostesses, and this is because of the kind of service that they provide. No airline wants to have a bad name, attached to their services. People don't want people to complain, so they have to make sure that the services that they provide are very top notch. Plus, they also pay licensing and charges to the various bodies within the Nigerian aviation industry. They pay services to NAMA, they pay services to NET, they pay levies to the NCAA as well. They pay licenses to the AID. So there's a lot. They pay handling services to NACO. So they also have those charges that are accruing to them, even if the aircraft doesn't move an inch from where it's being parked.
Okay, Dumebie, let's talk about a very pertinent issue, which is Nigeria Air. Nigeria Air has secured ATL, that's a air transport license. I hope so many acronyms one just need to to know. So forgive me if I mix them, but I think I'm right. ATL, air transport license, and that gives them the authorization to provide both scheduled and non-scheduled services on its way to get AOC, or the operating certification for it to begin flights. What do you think about this Nigeria Air stuff? Because the government announced the news in 2016. A lot of people, some people liked the idea, some people did not like the idea. Now, they've secured the ATL. The question then, which many analysts are saying, is that we've not even seen the memorandum of association. We don't really know the intricacies, at least the devil in the details. The federal government says it owns 5%. Who are the other equity holders? Who are the technical partners? So that it doesn't go the way of Nigeria Airways of those days. Or we've seen different, attempts to have a national carrier, and it just ends like that. So what do you think?
So first off, I would start with the fact that this is clearly just a huge attempt to literally own a national carrier. We've seen that several um, other African counterparts have you know um, and national carriers that are flagging, they're carrying their country flags everywhere. And I think this is just one way for Nigeria to just, take part in this bandwagon. But there are clearly a lot of structural and regulatory issues that we need to look at. Like you rightly said, there's still a lot of unclarity or uncertainty as to what details, for the Nigerian air entails. And like you mentioned before, this is just this has been happening before. We've had conversations about Nigerian Air. We've seen pictures about, okay, this is how the aircraft is going to look, and then the next minute, there's no word on it anymore. So the question now for a lot of analysts is that, is this going to be just another trend in the aviation industry for Nigeria, and what does this really mean for investors? So clearly, number one, the fact that there's still a lot of uncertainty on the details, it raises eyebrows on what exactly is going on with this with Nigerian Air. Number two, is this really just Nigeria's way of partaking or joining the bandwagon of several African countries that have national carriers? And do we really have what it takes to make sure that this aircraft is not just a one-off, that it just comes and it's going to die down? And number four, who are the who are the investors? What do they have? What's their stake? What's pricing going to look like? Is it going to be a monopolistic thing for Nigerian Air? Do they want to come in to take charge of the airline industry, reduce the power of the AON, who clearly right now are working like like an OPEC for Nigeria's airline industry? So it's clearly there's a lot of question marks surrounding this, and we're just going to have to keep watching to see how it all unfolds.
Investment in the Nigerian airline sector, because if the government is claiming, guys, we have 5% in this holdings. We don't know how many planes Nigeria Air has now, whether like 3, at least the last the report that I read. I don't know how true that is, because it's almost like opaque. I don't know if you've seen full details of this national carrier that the government is floating, but because I wouldn't say it's government now, because government says it's 5%, so majority private sector holders. The question right now is that the return on investment, really, if we take a look at private investment in the airline space, why are we still seeing investment in the sector, really? If we say that it's not as profitable as it should be, because Jet A1, which is number one cost, operating cost. Number two, the IATA also, even the airline operators will say labor is also quite intensive, labor cost. Getting skilled workers, you now have to train them. There's even skills shortage in that sector and all of that. So with all of this, why still that interest? How many private airlines do we have in Nigeria? Should that still be something that private investors should still look at and pounce on Nigeria Air?
Okay, so the airline business is a volume business, right? So it's the kind of business that if you let me just break it down with a little numbers. So if, let's say, um, you can make 10 naira or 1 naira from 1 million people, or about 500 million people, you're going to make a profit, right? So that's the kind of business that the airline industry runs. So it works with scale, it works with volume, it works with the amount of people and the amount of cargo that you can transport from one place to the other. So if an airline is able to do a lot of volume, if their passenger traffic is very high, if their cargo services or the amount of cargo that they carry from one place to another country, one place to the other is very high, they will be profitable. So it's not like airlines don't make any money at all. They do. But compared to the cost that they incur, it's very, very it's very, very little. And until they have an increase in passenger traffic and cargo, their services tend to, or their revenue tends to decline significantly. And unfortunately for the airline business, there are different things that affect these two significant sources of revenue for them. That's revenue and cargo. Things like weather, the pandemic, the Russia and Ukraine war that we're seeing now. So once there's anything that's affecting these two major sources of income for them, they have issues with generating substantial revenue. And the main thing is that, like I mentioned before, they're not able to pass the burden of the increased cost that they have to passengers. So whether or not their costs increase, they find it, they have to bear this cost. So when it comes to investment, because now traveling, moving from one place to the other has become somewhat of a necessity in the world today, airlines are very relevant and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So the best thing is for airlines to continue to look inward to see how they can continue to manage their operating costs and at the same time be more attractive to passengers and try to move more cargo, because from 2020 we saw a huge increase in the movement of cargo from one place to the other. So several airlines are beginning to generate a lot of revenue from cargo service. So airlines are just beginning to see how they can manage their costs and then keep their revenue more substantial. Plus, you find that a lot of airlines are still even loss generating, but they are in business, and investors continue to still put money because, like I mentioned before, transportation, moving from one place to the other, is a necessity. And for investors, the most important thing for them is how sustainable is the airline, and that's from a management and a corporate governance level. So, can this airline continue to remain relevant between now and the next few years? How much money can they make from each passenger? They also look at the regulatory environment that they function. Is the business environment positive for them? So with Nigerian Air that we're looking at right now, the core of the conversation with Nigerian Air, clearly, if the government has a 5% stake, there are private investors, obviously, putting in their money. And like I mentioned before, it could be a thing of being monopolistic, and it could be a thing of the airline, having a lot of regulatory backing from the government. If the airline has a huge regulatory backing from the government, they would tend to come in with probably cheaper airfares, and that would attract more passengers for them. They probably would come in with big support from maybe they don't have to pay so much for parking their aircraft. Their levies will probably be reduced, trying to make them more attractive to the eyes of the consumer or the passenger compared to other privately owned airlines. So I think that's why investors, are still eyeing the aviation industry space. Number one, because of the fact that it's a necessity right now for people to travel. And when we look at Nigeria with insecurity, road travel is not exactly the best. So it's possible that this Nigerian Air is just one way for the government to just somewhat monopolize the sector.
Okay, Dumebie, as we end this segment, let's end with the tickets prices. Of course, we've seen airlines have increased their prices, averagely perhaps 50,000 or even more. This is also an industry or a sector that got central bank intervention many years ago, I think, from the PAIF, the Power and Aviation Intervention Fund, from the Central Bank of Nigeria, and even some other intervention funds that some of them cannot even account for. We've seen that post-COVID, the number of passengers, air travelers, have increased, I think from 9 million in 2020 to about 13 million last year. Now, with the price increase, do you think that the revenue for these airlines would decrease, bearing in mind that there's an increase in price and bearing in mind that the economic situation isn't too favorable right now? So some people may just be dissing the airlines and perhaps taking alternative means of transport, at least talking about the domestic airlines, because if you've got to travel to London, you've got to travel by air, really. But at least if you've got to travel around the country, there may be alternatives. So do you see that the revenues of these airlines, will they decrease as a result of the price, ticket price increase?
So the ticket pricing, the increase in ticket pricing for airlines, the growth of the increase in their ticket, in the cost of tickets compared to the amount of cost, it's canceling out. Their costs are way higher than the increase in tickets, increase in tickets that they've already institutionalized. And they increased tickets from about like 30,000 to 50,000. And but for a round trip ticket, it's definitely going to be more. But in general, the issue that they have is that their costs are way higher, and they're not able to pass it down to the consumer in form of higher ticket prices. So at 50,000, the airlines are still making a loss because the cost of aviation fuel continues to increase. We've seen that the global price of oil is over $100 per barrel. FX prices have continued. The international airlines can't even repatriate funds because of this FX shortage. So there's rationing going on, and that's affecting their ability to, do their maintenance checks. They have a lot of things to spend with dollars, and they're not able to. So their costs are really high compared to the increase in tickets that they have. So even if passenger traffic has increased, how much are people paying for tickets? And they're not able to reflect this cost in their they're not able to reflect this increase in their cost in the price of the ticket. So regardless of how price of tickets have increased between now and last year, it's still not substantial enough to make up for the increase in cost for the airline. So clearly, they're still going to be running at a huge loss. So the unfortunate thing is that both the airlines and the consumers or the passengers now are on the receiving end of all of this cost. So people are saying that the ticket costs, ticket prices are higher, they are spending more. But for the airlines, like this is still not substantial enough for us to make enough money to stay afloat. So it's somewhat of a double whammy for them. And consumers on the other end are not only experiencing an increase in their ticket costs, but they're also experiencing an increase across board. All forms of transportation have increased. The cost across all forms of transportation have increased. So even if you're traveling by road, your cost has also increased. And airlines also are trying to somewhat innovatively how they price. So that there's some level of price discrimination that goes on when you ticket. So that's where you have economy class and all of that. But regardless, it's still not substantial enough because people that could afford the economy class or the business class probably just want to fly. Let's just go with the normal seating position. I'm not the first class sitting right now.
Okay.
So we have all of this going on.
So I think that's the next phase. So we'll be talking about the fuel scarcity with my next guests. But thank you very much for coming on the program. Dumebie Olumide is an economics and research analyst at Stears Business. We've been looking at the Nigerian airline industry. Dumebie, I'll see you soon. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
All right, let's quickly take a break. And when we return, I'll be chatting with the president of Pengasan, Festus Osifo, and he will be explaining to me why we're still having these few queues around Abuja and Lagos. That will be after the break. You can send your questions and your comments to all our social media platforms. We'll be right back.